This wasn't supposed to happen. A Republican congressman walking into a hearing and going straight after his own side, not with talking points, not with a speech, but with documents that forced the entire room to go silent. And what he revealed in those few minutes didn't just raise questions. It exposed a pattern that people online have been whispering about for years. Names hidden, names exposed, and decisions that don't seem to follow any clear logic. But what made this moment different is that it wasn't speculation anymore.
Behind me, I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victim's lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victim's survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm gonna unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking. Not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. And then finally, what we have here is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need that you're holding on to and over-redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI, and it's in there. And what happens when you go to the portal at the DOJ to look at what's behind this redaction? Another redaction. So we can't even see them. And then there's some of these files you've pulled down from the website that we will never see because we can't search the redactions. So I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm gonna answer this question.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr.
Chairman.
This isn't how this works.
Can I have my time back?
Mr.
Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer. The time belongs to the gentleman from
All
Kentucky.
right, I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So
Yes.
I'm gonna put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman, may I give my answer on that? It's a political joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out of over 4,700, and we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician. You need to get on these matters.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
Is that your position as well?
My position is any victim who comes forward, of course, we would love to hear from them. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim time
this is bigger than Watergate.
When I don't answer a question the way you want.
This goes over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's
now,
where the
I want to know, at what point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wessner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
May she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban that we were talking about on deep fake AI porn. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
The gentleman's time has expired.
It was sitting right there in black and white, or in some cases, completely blacked out. When Thomas Massie stepped into that hearing, he didn't come in loud. He didn't need to. The tension was already there, and everyone in the room knew this wasn't going to be a routine exchange. He had something in his hands, actual documents pulled from the government's own release tied to Jeffrey Epstein. And instead of easing into it, he went straight to the point. No build-up, no filler, just evidence. That alone changed the energy instantly. Because once you move from opinion to proof, the conversation shifts. And what Massie was about to show would do exactly that. The first document he held up didn't involve powerful men or hidden networks. It involved something even more sensitive, victims. Specifically, an email that had been sent by lawyers representing individuals connected to the case. According to what was explained in the room, that email contained a list of names that were never meant to be made public. These were people who, for their own safety and privacy, had explicitly asked not to be exposed. But when the documents were released by the Department of Justice, that exact email was included. Fully visible. Every single name out there. And that's where things took a turn that no one could ignore. Because as Massie pointed out, the document hadn't just been blindly released. Someone had gone through it. Someone had edited it. There were redactions, but not where you'd expect. One name was removed. The lawyer's name was hidden. But the names of the individuals who were supposed to be protected left completely visible. That contradiction hit hard. Because it raises a question that's difficult to answer. If someone had the ability to redact parts of a document, why were the most sensitive names left exposed? For many watching, that moment wasn't just shocking, it was confusing, because it didn't follow a clear pattern. And when something doesn't follow logic, people start asking whether there's something else behind it. Was it a mistake? Was it negligence? Or was there a different priority at play? Massie didn't try to answer that directly. He didn't need to. The document spoke for itself. But just as the room was absorbing that, he moved on. And what came next shifted the focus from victims to power. The second document introduced a name that has been tied to Epstein discussions for years, Les Wexner. A billionaire figure, widely known, and someone whose connection to Epstein has been reported on in multiple places. But this wasn't about general association. This was about how his name appeared, or didn't appear, in a specific file. According to Massie, in a document where individuals were being identified in connection with serious allegations, Wexner's name had been redacted, completely removed. And here's where things got even more intense. Because as Massie explained, that redaction didn't stay in place. After he pointed it out, after he raised the issue publicly, the name was suddenly added back in. The explanation given was that it had been corrected within 40 minutes. But Massie's response cut straight through that defense. 40 minutes after being caught. That's how he framed it. And whether you agree with that interpretation or not, the timing itself raised eyebrows, because it leads to another uncomfortable question. If the name could be restored that quickly, why was it removed in the first place? Was it an error that just happened to involve a high-profile figure? Or was it something else that only changed once attention was brought to it? Again, no clear answer was given in that moment. And that lack of clarity only added to the tension, because by now, a pattern was starting to form. One document exposing victims, another involving a powerful name being hidden and then restored. And just when it seemed like that might be the peak of it, Massie revealed the third piece. This one didn't involve partial redactions. It involved something far more extreme. A document so heavily obscured that it appeared as nothing but a solid black page. These are known as 302 forms, reports created by the Federal Bureau of Investigation after interviews with witnesses. These are supposed to contain detailed accounts, names, statements, context, but the version being shown? Completely unreadable. Massie described it in a way that stuck with people watching. Not just redacted, but redacted on top of redactions. Meaning even when you try to access what's behind it, there's another layer blocking it. That level of concealment is hard to ignore, because it suggests that whatever is in those documents isn't just being hidden from the public, it's being restricted at multiple levels. And that raises the stakes significantly. Now, it's important to be clear here. There are legitimate reasons for redacting information: protecting privacy, ongoing investigations, legal boundaries. All of those factors exist. But when the level of redaction reaches a point where nothing is visible at all, people begin to question what's being protected and who it's being protected for. Some reports suggest that these documents may include sensitive testimonies or references to individuals that haven't been publicly named. Others believe it's part of a broader effort to control what information becomes accessible. But without transparency, those remain questions rather than answers. And that's exactly where Massie took the conversation next. He didn't stay focused on just the documents themselves. He shifted to something deeper, the decision-making process behind them. At what point, he asked, did authorities decide that certain individuals were no longer considered connected in a way that would lead to charges? Because if someone is named in a document in a serious context, there should be a record explaining how that conclusion was reached. And according to what was presented, those records weren't there. That absence is what made the moment feel bigger than just one hearing, because it suggested that the issue wasn't just about what was released, but about what wasn't. And more importantly, why? If decisions were made behind the scenes, where is the documentation? Where is the explanation? Without that, it creates a gap. And in that gap, speculation naturally grows. But the story didn't stop at documents or missing explanations. It extended into the system itself. Because during the exchange, references were made to internal disagreements, specifically involving communication between the DOJ and the FBI. At one point, it was suggested that even top officials didn't have full access to all the materials, that certain files were being withheld or delayed. If that's accurate, it introduces a completely different layer to the situation, because now it's not just about what the public sees. It's about what different parts of the government see. And if there are gaps there, it raises questions about coordination, authority, and control. Who has access? Who decides what gets shared? And what happens when those lines aren't clear? These aren't simple questions. And in that moment, they didn't get simple answers. Then came a detail that added even more weight to everything that had already been said. A reference to multiple individuals stepping away from their positions. 17, to be exact. Now, that number on its own doesn't prove anything. People leave roles for many reasons. But in the context of everything else, the documents, the redactions, the missing explanations, it becomes another piece of a much larger puzzle. Some observers believe those departures could be linked to internal disagreements or pressure. Others suggest it may have been a way to distance from a situation that was becoming increasingly complex. But again, without clear confirmation, those remain interpretations. What is certain is that when you combine all of these elements together, it creates a narrative that's difficult to ignore. And that's what made this moment stand out. Not because it provided all the answers, but because it highlighted how many questions still exist. A Republican congressman challenging his own side. Documents that don't align in a clear way. Information that appears, disappears, and reappears. And a system where even those inside it may not have full visibility. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, it's easy to see why people are paying attention. Because this isn't just about one individual or one case. It's about trust. About whether information is being handled in a way that's consistent, transparent, and fair. And when that trust is questioned, even briefly, it leaves an impact. At the same time, it's important to stay grounded. There's a difference between what is known, what is suggested, and what is assumed. And in situations like this, those lines can blur quickly. That's why framing matters. Some reports claim there may be deeper connections that haven't been fully revealed. Others argue that the system is simply operating within legal constraints that limit what can be shared. Both perspectives exist, and without full access to all the information, it's difficult to draw firm conclusions. But what can't be ignored is the moment itself, the way it unfolded, the reaction it created, and the fact that it came from someone who wasn't expected to take that position. That alone changed the conversation, because it showed that the concerns being raised aren't confined to one side or one viewpoint. They're crossing lines. And when that happens, people start listening more closely. Where does that leave things? Right now, it leaves a lot of open questions. About documents, about decisions, about how information moves or doesn't move through the system. And until those questions are answered clearly, the conversation isn't going anywhere. It's only going to grow, and maybe that's the most important takeaway from all of this. Not what was said in those few minutes, but what it represents moving forward. A moment where something unexpected happened, where evidence was placed on the table, and where the response didn't close the conversation, it expanded it. Because once people start asking questions like these, they don't just stop. They keep digging, they keep watching, and they keep waiting to see what comes next. If you want more breakdowns like this, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next.